Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, infinite consciousnesses. Thank you so much for dropping by. I'm noticing I have my noise machine on that's probably causing some background noise. So one moment, I'm going to turn it off. And that's live YouTube. Hi. I get the most interesting comments on this channel. Here is a comment. When I've looked for the person, I find there isn't one. Isn't this the purpose of self-inquiry? Okay, two parts, the purpose of self-inquiry and this person's experience. We'll go to the second one first. Isn't this the purpose of self-inquiry? I thought so for a very, very, very long time. Then I started really studying the teachings of Ramana Maharshi. Then I began studying the core of Advaita Vedanta. The core of Advaita Vedanta is the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the teachings of Adi Shankara, the founder of the school of Advaita Vedanta. So, within the Upanishads, you could maybe find that interpretation, but you would have to kind of add that. Nowhere that I'm aware of in the Upanishads does it say you realize there's no person. What it says, you realize your true nature is Brahman and that you are that. Within the Bhagavad Gita, there's no mention of that, again, to my knowledge. To the contrary, a very similar message of the Upanishads, the recognition of your true nature. And, the Bhagavad Gita is very explicit that there are things to do, such as karma yoga, such as bhakti yoga, such as meditation. And for such things to be done, there needs to be a doer. And simultaneously, that you're not the doer. But again, nowhere that I'm aware of in the Gita does it talk about, that being the purpose of self-inquiry. Of course, the paradox is, I'll leave that paradox alone. So that takes us to Adi Shankara, the founder of the school of Advaita Vedanta. Now, Adi Shankara explicitly expresses the opposite of this view. Adi Shankara puts forth the idea that there is a person, there is a doer, and we're not it. And I invite you to study Shankara for yourself. I've just begun my studies. So by the big three of Advaita Vedanta, this is not what Advaita Vedanta is about. And then that takes us to Ramana Maharshi. Once again, I'm aware of no place in which Ramana says anything like that. Now, what he does say, and again, what the big three say, is the recognition that you are not the doer, that you are, as someone else who responded to this so eloquently said, I'm just going to read their response, and if you want to, when people leave comments, I've decided not to mention their names. But if you want to claim this comment, feel free to do so. I see it that way too. The personal self, ego, is objective to the self or subject and is only a problem when there is identification. Easy to think and write the sentence is not always easy to fully live it. The yoga path begins with learning how to master and manage the personal self and its world. Couldn't have said it better. Thank you. I hope the person who said that wants their name attributed to it. So that's my understanding of Advaita Vedanta. It's not that there isn't a person, it's that you aren't the person. And it's only a problem when there's identification. And the path begins. Advaita Vedanta begins exactly like this person says, or as they say, the yogic path begins with learning how to master and manage the personal self and its world. Now, here's where Neo-Advaita just completely splits off from Advaita Vedanta. Neo-Advaita says, forget the person, or even goes as this. I don't know, the person who said the original comment, that there is no person. And this is why I've said time and time again that Neo-Advaita it's completely separate from Advaita Vedanta. It's its own thing. Um, is Neo-Advaita true? Well, find out for yourself. I don't think it is. I think it's a very distorted, harmful um, distortion of Advaita Vedanta. And I'll say a little more. So the thing is, I consider Neo-Advaita sort of a slow form of suicide because it does aim to destroy the self. Destroy the person, destroy the doer. Whereas Advaita Vedanta seeks to free us from identification with the doer. So, it's possible to destroy the doer. There are yogis who do it. And as I've said before, um, I read one text that talks about, in the highest form of samadhi, you just stop all action. And that includes even eating. And so such yogis will die unless they're fed by devotees. Ramana achieved it. And generally what happens is they go off into the mountains and die. They're just in the state of samadhi. They don't tend to the body at all, and they just leave the body. If that's your goal, then Neo-Advaita is a legitimate path for you because it seeks to destroy the doer. And that's why I believe there have been Neo-Advaita suicides. That's why it's taken me every time I got serious about self-inquiry as taught by Neo-Advaita, I became suicidal. And that's ultimately why I gave it up and started looking at Advaita Vedanta. Of course, at the time I thought Neo-Advaita was Advaita Vedanta. Surprise! So that's that. So this person also interestingly said, when I've looked for the person, I find there isn't one. So I had a very similar experience thousands of times. I'd be like, I'd be like, I want a hot dog. I don't know, I'm just coming up with an example. And I'd be like, well, who is it that wants a hot dog? And then there would be this deep, profound stillness. And I'd say, oh, look at that. There isn't actually a person who wants a hot dog. Well, no. Actually, there is first of all, so there was a desire for the hot dog and then it vanished. But is it true that there isn't, and we have to define person. And Advaita Vedanta clearly defines these terms, such as the subtle body. The subtle body contains the doer, the mind, and and I want to say the emotions, but I'm still learning the terminology myself. So these issues are just non-issues when you study Advaita Vedanta, and they become huge issues when you study Neo-Advaita because it's just it's just kind of this made-up thing. And so I don't know if this person who made that comment, I don't know your experience. I can only share mine, which was that through self-inquiry, desires vanish, but that doesn't mean the doer vanishes and the person vanishes. And if it, I'm not even, I'm just going to stop right here because it becomes word games at this point. And we've stepped outside the tradition of Advaita Vedanta, and we're having word games that within Advaita Vedanta don't even exist. And And the thing is, by tradition, Adi Shankara's last words were, he was so frustrated with his devotees who were doing all these word games that he's like, by tradition, his final dying words were, quit your like chattering. I forget the exact words, like, quit your chattering, your mind games and worship Hari. Now, Hari is the Vedic name for the supreme. Different traditions like the Hare Krishnas say that Hari is the name of Krishna, and okay, they can say that, but traditionally, Hari is in the actual Vedas the name of the supreme. So the founder of Advaita Vedanta on such things, who clarified what is the doer, what is the person, all his devotees were playing these word games, and his response was, shut the blankety blank up and worship Hari, worship the supreme. So I'm not directing this at that person. It's like, do whatever you want, follow whatever teacher you feel drawn to. If you don't think there's a person, follow that. And my prediction is you'll come back to this channel or another channel in a couple of years looking for support, because, a friend of mine who took Neo-Advaita hardcore, his brother had a psychotic break, and he was on the brink of suicide for years. And neither one of them now want anything to do with spirituality. So my prediction is, if if you're just dabbling in the path, I'm not going to direct it to the commenter. Anyone who dabbles in Neo-Advaita, like, you're fine. Anyone who gets serious about Advaita Vedanta, like suicide, insanity, or coming back to channels like this for support, is my prediction of where you'll end up, and I'm willing to be wrong. That was my experience. That there absolutely is a person, and through self-inquiry, you have an experience which can be easily interpreted as there's no person. And lastly, this person wrote, again, they wrote, when I've looked for the person, I find there isn't one. Isn't this the purpose of self-inquiry? Who said that isn't the purpose of self-inquiry? I'm not asking you a self-inquiry question. I'm not asking, who is it that wants to know? I'm literally asking you, who said that's the purpose of self-inquiry? Because it's not the Bhagavad Gita, it's not the Upanishads, and it's not Adi Shankara, the founder of the school. To my knowledge, it's not Ramana Maharshi, who I consider one of the greats, if not the greatest in this school. So who said this? I want to know, who said that's the purpose of self-inquiry? Because my hunch is it's not someone aligned with the school of Advaita Vedanta, but claiming to be aligned with it. Thank you so much for the beautiful comment. Thank you, everyone, for dropping by and watching. Mwah.